And you are in good hands with Lisa. She has full Zoom privilege and the Zoom stage for the next 2 hours. But I'll be here and able to support anything that's going on in between our live sessions. If you have any questions about the project or just need any additional support from SAIL. So with that, I pass it over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you again, Lee. That was fascinating. And a question I had in the back of my mind for a while about the color of the light being that blue haze. So good morning, everybody. I've been sick this past week. So if my voice sounds a little odd, that's what's going on. I think I've got it under control, and I'm feeling pretty confident that I can do this in these 2 hours and not have many breakthrough symptoms. So fingers crossed there. Just a bad head cold. So I was reflecting on time and the lack of time that we seem to have for our discussions. What's going on today is I've designed in a number of experiential activities, and it's really important that we have the time to engage in those opportunities. So what I'd like to do today is after each activity, we're going to keep the time short in the discussion just after, but what I'll do is I'll stay on the Zoom at noon. And for anybody who wants to, I'll be available and hang out, and we can extend the discussion if you'd like to. So what I'd like to do today to get started is to just do a brief review of what we got into last time. All right. So last time we talked about the important role of self-awareness in quantum leadership and change. We got into that 3 spheres model, and we saw how changes in the personal sphere are more powerful than in any other sphere. We also talked about the power of paradigms, how we think the world works, the nature of reality. How transcending or shifting paradigms is the got into those of Newtonian. A number of experiential exercises where we had an opportunity to reflect on how we're together. We didn't have enough time to discuss what emerged for you all. We got into aspects of quantum thinking and attributes of quantum leadership that you would like to grow or embrace more. And also, you were left with the opportunity that you might engage in some practice and action in between the sessions, noticing, practicing, and experimenting with those quantum aspects and attributes that emerged last time. So I'd like to leave a little space for right now. Would anyone like to share anything that emerged from this process?
Lisa, I might suggest that
either
your webcam off
because aspects from your insights and or what happened in your experimenting in between.
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your internet connection is not stable. So I might suggest that you turn off your webcam. That might help it a little bit. Did we lose her altogether? Oh, geez. I'll send her the invitation again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I turned my video off, so maybe that will help keep it more stable. Can you hear me now and see this? Okay, great. Hopefully this will stabilize. Yeah. So would anyone like to share any insights that emerged last time or through experimentation since the last session? The floor is yours to share. Can we get one taker?
I'd actually like to jump in. I watched the recording, and I want to say that was really helpful. I was disappointed I couldn't make the first session, but there was something that I've been thinking about a lot, and how risk falls both in the Newtonian and quantum thinking ranges, and like the only difference is our understanding of what is appropriate. And so like that's something that I've been reflecting on And then also like how to talk to people who have different sensibilities about what is appropriate behavior and goals and stuff. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the idea of appropriate and how we're holding our mind, how we're holding our perception in any given moment. Anything else want to be shared from what emerged last time?
I can't answer the last question you have up there. What would you do differently? But what I came to realize is that how I'm letting firefighting and the things I just have to get done get in the way of doing things, in some cases more the way I'd like to do them. And I don't know how to answer the question, what would I do differently? But I think it really brought it home to me that I need to do something differently. So I really appreciated that to think about.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
It's Mary. I think one of the things that we found is that as much as we'd like to be more in quantum, sometimes our roles put us in Newtonium because of the compliance aspects of our roles. I know I heard that from a couple of people. But I think there's a nice we can find the balance that we need to still have a successful and strong work environment. And to manage activities, it's just finding that place.
Yeah, the structures in which we live and the influence that they have on our actions.
So one of the takeaways I had from the last session was the false dichotomy that I was from time to time falling in. And it was contextual answer that you gave that was helpful. I liked it. And I liked the answer actually, which was saying that I don't have to, because I had this Newtonian perspective and look, I was thinking either or. And you said, and I once I even said, well, quantum is better, the best, which you corrected me that that wasn't the case. Both had its own strengths and weaknesses, and it depends on where you use it. That was kind of helpful to me and to kind of resolving the issue. And since then, I've been looking around, thinking of my office, thinking what I'm doing, thinking of the plans that I'm trying to do here. I felt like I was doing some of those already. And I was thinking, well, wait a minute, I didn't name it. I didn't give a name. I didn't know the name of it, but I was probably doing it as well. And it was considered as quantum that I didn't know it was in that frame. Just an example. And I started thinking, what else is it different that what I'm doing that could be considered as quantum? And I couldn't figure out yet anything, but I'm kind of pushing myself. I still try to see where I am. And because one of the requirements that you ask on the presentation is, how did this quantum leadership help you? How did it develop you? How did it make you change around? And I'm still not there yet. I couldn't do it yet. I'm thinking about it. I'm just trying to push myself, but I couldn't achieve to view with that lens yet. Thank you.
That was really well said and a really great synthesis of what we did last time, the important points. I think I'll leave the space open to discussion, but move on to the next slide so we can continue the discussion based on what Zakir just said. So if we think that Newtonian ways of thinking or being might not be serving us in some way, it creates an opening for us to explore how we're thinking, relating, and creating. So this is kind of what Zakir was alluding to. I heard myself say last time, where is the soft edge when we were having that discussion? Where is the edge of our comfort zones? That's where we're experimenting and practicing, which is unique to every single person. So we're leaning into discomfort just a little bit, but we're not pushing or using force or shoulds or have tos. And so that had me thinking about our boat and how I talked about this spirit of joy and play and exploration, how we're approaching the process to help us to remember that there's not this, we're so used to the value judgment of good, bad, better, and to not use the shoulds or the have tos while we're just exploring this territory. Does anything else want to be said in relation to the last slide and this one before we move on?
Lisa, sorry for interrupting. What is soft edge? Literally, in English, what is it? What is it in this context? English is my second language. That's why I'm asking. Sorry about this.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. So I'm using that to sort of create a sensing or a visual for people. It's words I've put together to say the soft edge. And what I've written there below that is the description of the soft edge, the edge of the comfort zone, where we're just dancing. And I'm using the word soft so that we're not thinking or moving in a way of using force. Does that make sense?
So more relaxed and flexible area?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So it's not the weakness.
No.
It's that. Thank you.
Anything else want to be shared from your process from last time and in between? Okay, then. So this was an important highlight that Zakir also highlighted about how we're holding ourselves in this experimentation and that we're not using force. We're considering what might be possible in any moment using awareness. So this was also a review from last time connected to what we were just saying. Zohar refers to how we're approaching this as leadership at the edge. Awareness of the strengths and weaknesses of paradigms in general, and that we can assess the worth for any given context. There's that word appropriate context. So really we're moving with this both and, not either or. We're not using value judgments. There's no right or wrong. We're trying to get the best out of both paradigms using the strengths of each for the betterment of our organization. So today we're going to get into a couple of new quantum concepts: entanglement and non-locality, and interconnection. And then we'll be looking at mindset, our beliefs, values, and agency. And at the end, we'll have another practice and action offering. Just want to lay a couple of conceptual foundations. So mindset, a particular way of thinking, set of beliefs, attitudes, and perspectives that shape how we interpret ourselves around. We're all familiar with the idea of mindset. What's interesting is how interconnected or related it is. And so I added here a reminder of Meadows' leverage point statement: the power to transcend paradigms, the mindset out of which the system arises, is the highest leverage point for change. So in her writing, she almost uses these two terms interchangeably. And we reflected on this in relationship to the three spheres model, understanding the power of the personal sphere. And last time we focused on paradigms. This time we'll look at beliefs, agency, and values, how beliefs influence our perception of reality, how agency is tied to the beliefs that we hold, and how values are at the heart of agency. So starting with beliefs. Acceptance that something is true or even exists when there is no direct evidence or proof. So we all have a sense of what beliefs are. And I love this image of the elephant, where depending on where we're standing, what our perspective is, it's a tree, it's a fan, it's a snake, it's a wall, it's a rope, it's a sphere. So we believe what we see, and we see what we believe. So if someone were to ask us, how flexible are your beliefs? Have you ever changed a belief? We sit inside for just a moment and reflect on that question. What arises typically is, well, what I believe to be true. So when we sit with that, most people will say, my beliefs aren't flexible, and it's really hard to change a belief. We practice, prioritize, invest in, and build things based on the beliefs that we hold. We hold them, repeat them, reinforce them. We're all familiar with this idea of beliefs. So what I'd like to do to really get into this is
Lisa, we're losing you. That's not good.
create a word cloud, and then a word cloud will give us an information about.
All right, I'm texting her so that she knows her connection is failing because I don't even think she can hear me. Sorry, everyone. Just when it was getting good.
It's going to be one of those days.
It is.
All right, let's see.
Oh.
Can you see this?
Yes. I think Zakir had something to say, though.
Okay, Zakir?
Actually, I was gonna try to kind of help cover by the time Lisa was trying to, but I was gonna ask about the question or discuss with my colleagues about the previous slide that usually the cycles aren't the way we learned, the way I learned, the way I looked was usually the other way, rather than first personal and then community and then believe, that kind of circles in the previous one. I believe it was the previous slide. And in this one, it's a little bit different. I was kind of really not confused, but interesting. I found it interesting.
Oh, you mean the 3 spheres model that we were looking at?
Yes, I thought it's like the other way.
Mm.
And it's from the micro to the macro mentality. Again, it's still, we are the systems kids, systems children, that we are in a frame, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably making me think that way. Again,
Thanks for sharing that.
the reason was, again, to help discuss with friends. That's all. No worries, please.
Okay. Hopefully the internet will hold. So I'm not sure what you heard, so I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and when you pull that up, it'll open into a new interface where you can submit your responses to the question. If you submit 1 word or 2 words hyphenated, it will work best in terms of the way it generates the visual word cloud. You can put in as many responses as you would like, and you can also put them in as one at a time. Put in your word or 2 words and hit submit over and over, or you can put them all in together with commas. At least that's the way I've seen it to work. So I'm going to stop the share for a second here to grab the link for you. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Okay, so how about everybody try to go to that window? You should get a submission interface. I just activated it.
Lisa, I don't see a link in the chat. Is that where you were planning to put it?
Yeah, I dropped it. Oh, try that again.
I don't see it either, Lisa.
Oh, it's funny. Hey, Jose, it was defaulted. Only go to you.
Yep. I just
Apparently, only you and I are communicating today. Does everybody get it now?
Yep.
Okay. Now it should be active. And when you put in your responses, you won't see the cloud yet because I'm keeping the cloud. Okay, it's working. And I like to give people time to just reflect on their own and put in their own thoughts before they see other people's thoughts. So I'm not going to show the cloud initially. And just take your time with putting in your thoughts.
Lisa, what exactly do you want us to do? Sorry about this.
So you see the question there? What do you believe about how change happens?
Yes,
So in response to that question, if you open the link, are you seeing a submission interface?
I do. But do I need to do something comma or hyphenating or something like that? Or is it just
So you
that?
can put in one word at a time, or you can put them all in with a comma in between. If you put two words, if you hyphenate them, it will keep them together. They
Okay,
don't float off apart in the cloud.
thank you.
Okay, so as you are reflecting, if you go to the screen, my screen, where you can see the cloud listings, feel free to add them. I'm seeing that they didn't add mine, which is interesting. I'm going to drop out for a second. Hmm.
I'm not able to submit.
It did let you submit it?
No,
Oh, no.
do I?
Well, I think she closed the poll.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
she generated the cloud. Yeah.
Did that have a negative effect, Carolyn? Did I went out and back in?
Yeah,
Oh,
it says
no,
the
well-
poll is full.
Yeah, I think we hit the limit of the number of responses and it was closed. So, oh, we see more now.
Okay. So then reflecting on what we see here, what do we notice? Individual, directed, cause effect, clear, planning, control, directive, collective action, gradual. If we were to analyze this from a Newtonian and quantum perspective, what do we notice?
I think a lot of it is very Newtonian. So the cause effect, the clear planning, the controlled. I think from what we were talking about next week, that seems very Newtonian.
Agreed. Agreed. So I'm going to stop the share.
I wonder what it would look like if some of the non-Newtonian words were in larger text and not like feelings and emotions and inevitability and stuff like that. Those, they all seem to have somehow been marginalized, and cause effect has been prioritized in this visualization. I wonder what it would look like if the words were different.
So the emphasis, the larger words come forward if there is a higher number of folks who submit the same answer.
Awesome. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that we can see that the emphasis. So this is telling us that more than one person, multiple people submitted collective action, cause effect, clear planning, controlled, and directed. Things like that. So I'm going to stop the share. And go back to where we were. So in our first word cloud, when we looked at what do you believe about how change happens, we saw a lot of Newtonian action words, if you will. So our next question we're going to work with is what do you believe about your agency, your ability to affect systems change? So we're looking at out to the external world in terms of our agency, not our agency with ourselves. So same process where you can submit 1 or 2 words, works the same, submitting them individually or all together. And I'm going to head out again. Grab the link for you. This time I'll send it to everyone instead of just Jose. And let me know if that worked. I have to activate it for you. Wait, hold on a second. So my apologies. I have lost the my Chrome. So let me find it again. Okay.
Is this one anonymous too, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So it is active and it is generating. Interesting. If there's anything you'd like to emphasize, feel free to drop something more in that you already see here. And what do we notice here that's arising about how we feel about our agency to affect systems change, larger change outside of ourselves?
We all seem to have very different opinions about our agency.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense actually, because change is contextual too, right? The actors in the institution is important. Institutional culture is important.
Mm-hmm. We are seeing 2 that seem to be coming forward the most: deliberate insufficient.
Lisa, you might have to repeat yourself because the last like 30 seconds or so, the internet
No,
just, it's not working.
to act
Lisa, do you mind repeating yourself? The internet went down for you.
Okay, can you hear me?
You're back.
Back. Would you like to see that word cloud again? I think I'll leave it in this smaller mode. Maybe it will like that better. So I don't know if you could hear me or when it dropped out, but we were seeing this deliberate and insufficient coming forward. And in terms of a Newtonian or a quantum perspective, most often we see that people have a limited belief in their sense of agency when it comes to the general tendency to be holding a Newtonian mindset. So we do see the word insufficient here in our responses.
I have a question, Lisa.
Yep.
Would the word I'm thinking about in terms of Newtonian thinking, where does deliberate fit? Because I think about deliberate in terms of being intentional about turning into skids and following what emerges. But I think that a lot of scientific determinism could fall into that deliberate side also.
What do folks think? Where do you think deliberate fits?
I think it's on the line. I think it could go either way because it could be depending on where you are in the change process.
Mm.
You're leading versus part of a team. And I think if you're leading and it's deliberate, that might be more on the Newtonian side. Whereas if you're part of a team, you're working to work together deliberately to try and impose that or bring that change about. So I think that falls on the quantum side. So it could go either way.
And I see Carolyn's chat response, the soft edge, playful response to how are we perceiving this?
Well, something Jose said just literally made me do a mental skid or a record scratch. And I don't say this lightly, kind of blew my mind thinking about the context of, again, of research and how to do that in a group versus having a process that's deliberate, meaning observational, and then following where it goes versus deliberate and telling someone, right? So doing something based off of observation and following the path or the skid or whatever. Yeah, that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I see where you're going. And I kind of been feeling into the both and of it, right? That
Yeah.
we might have some aspects that are deliberate, but then where is that soft edge? And do we hold other aspects of process simply in flow and emergence, for example?
Please correct me, Lisa. Again, my limitation in English. Deliberate reminds me more planned, something that is planned, right? Which is usually on the Newtonian side, meaning you try to plan everything, you put everything in the equation and expect something. But on the quantum side, as I have learned, it looks like it's uncertain and you cannot plan everything. It's a little bit chaotic in one sense. And you even planning or guessing, predicting something is really less likely on the quantum side, to my understanding.
Yes. So to answer your questions in the way that you just asked them of me, the answer is yes, you are accurate. The way that I answered in general in this process was intentional, sort of playing in the way that Carolyn was suggesting with the soft edge and how much our minds want to categorize and say right, wrong, this, that, this category. So that was more of a process decision. But what you said is accurate, Zakir. Do you follow me?
Thank you. Yes.
Carolyn's nodding. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're socially conditioned or habituated to hold certain beliefs, and our sense of agency is deeply tied to the beliefs that we hold about the world. Our beliefs influence whether and how we express our agency. So let's bring in a quantum perspective now. We're going to get into the idea of entanglement. So entanglement is a fundamental aspect of quantum theory. So technically it states, maybe Lee will help instead, that two or more particles become interconnected. The state of one is derived the distance between them. Changes to the state of one instantaneously affect the state of the other. Now those are just words, so I dug around to find something that I've got a 1 minute visual that we can watch.
With a property inherent to quantum called quantum entanglement. Briefly put, Einstein and his colleagues found that according to the math, interact, and then why
Can you hear me?
Back. Yeah, you're back now. But if you could go back to that slide before you played the video, we missed that.
I'm back now? Yes,
You're
I don't
back.
think it's going to let us do this little video.
If you can send me the link, I can do it.
I'm back.
Yeah, and there was a request in the chat. Of course, we'll share the video after the live session. But Lisa, if you give me the link, I can share the video.
Okay. Let's see here. Working on it. Carolyn, I believe
Got it.
that where I am at is simply, it's at 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. And what you were trying to explain when you had the slide up before you press play, we missed that. So if you could repeat it and I'll get the video, 4 minutes, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you couldn't hear what I was explaining before the video?
No.
Okay. So I was explaining in just a couple of simple statements about quantum entanglement, which I'm not going to try to do without my notes. Now that Carolyn has this up. So this is, Carolyn, this is just going to go for, I can't remember the cutoff. It's like 1 minute and 8 seconds. So go like,
Okay.
it's like 1 minute and 8 seconds. So
You ready for me to play it?
yeah, I'll call it then.
Okay.
the property inherent to quantum mechanics called quantum entanglement. Briefly put, Einstein and his colleagues found that according to the math of quantum mechanics, if two objects interact and then widely separate, a subsequent measurement on one of those objects revealing one or another quality would have an instantaneous influence on the other object regardless of the distance between them. Einstein called this strange quantum connection. He called it spooky action at a distance, and it troubled him deeply. His straightforward, intuitive belief was that widely separated objects are independent of one another. But quantum entanglement seemingly denied that by providing an invisible quantum connection capable of linking the distant objects together, or, as the name says, entangling them.
That's the cut.
Einstein could not
Okay.
accept this quantum view of reality, and so
Awesome. Thanks for your help there. I will pull back up the slide then so we can see that, that information. Okay. So what I had said in some simple words was how two or more particles become interconnected. The state of one is directly correlated to the state of the other, regardless of the distance between them. So changes in the state of one instantaneously affect the state of the other. And I thought that having that little visual would help a little bit conceptually. Now, again, we don't have to know anything more than this scientifically to take a look at the implications that this has for us. And I just put a little note at the bottom because at the end of this video, they talk about how in 2022, these three physicists that I have listed here won the Nobel Prize for their experiments that demonstrated that quantum entanglement is real.
The property inherent to quantum mechanics.
There we go. So it's really challenging for us to comprehend because there's no equivalent to entanglement in the Newtonian side of things. So I sat with this and sat with this and sat with this. And the way that I was able to hold it in my mind was to put it in a chart like this, where I looked at it and said, okay, I'll put entanglement over here, and then there's no equivalent over here. However, what I kept paying attention to was that within entanglement itself, that idea of non-locality, that was something that we could wrap our minds around. So I put this in the chart because we understand that on the one side, we know what cause and effect is like, that we have the one billiard ball and the other billiard ball. And when one hits the other, the second is going to move. This local action, this cause and effect. But then with non-locality, there's no local relationship. So I thought about that. This instantaneous connection across a distance is actually something that is not so unfamiliar to us. These non-local interactions we see in everyday life because of quantum mechanics, right? So like wireless communication, it's almost like we take these things for granted, that we are having a direct experience of non-local interactions. So just to get our minds in that direction, can someone name another instance in everyday life that we see these non-local interactions like wireless communication? To anything that would be non-local, like GPS. All the things that we click the remote button for that we take for granted. So we see non-locality, this instantaneous connection across a distance in our everyday lives. So here is the synopsis that I came up with about the importance of entanglement for the implications on our understanding of connection or interconnectedness. So it introduces instantaneous non-local connection. Define the constraints of distance, which suggest influence can transcend distance. It depicts interdependence, challenging the notion of isolated, separate entities like we're so used to thinking in terms of. Invites contemplation on the nature of our relationships. And encourages a shift in mindset towards interconnectedness. But this is really hard for us. We're really challenged by the idea of interconnectedness because we're habituated to believe that we're separate. So I sat with that and sat with that and sat with that. And I just teased out that one piece from our contemplations over the weeks, the separate interconnectedness dimension, if you will. And then listed out all the ways that we might think about separate or interconnected. And we're so used to seeing in our world all these reflections of separate parts, fragmentation. The system is separate from ourselves. And we can skim through this and see that we live this challenge every day. We really are habituated to think in terms of that we are separate. So this led me to designing a thought experiment where we could bring a quantum perspective to our beliefs about change. So what I did was I took the most important all the most important points from the prior slides and put them into this little chart. So you can see what we just talked about, instantaneous, non-local connection, how influence can transcend distance, interdependence, interconnectedness, and the list of other concepts that we've talked about last week. So you'll need a pen and paper for this. I'm going to guide a three-part reflection. You don't need anything else. As I state the questions, they'll appear on the screen, and you can turn off your videos for some quiet reflection with yourself if you'd like. I'm assuming that everybody has pen and paper. All right. Let's begin by taking a few long, slow, deep breaths to help us settle. And just settle into your body. Continue taking long, slow, deep breaths. And allow any distracting thoughts to just fall away into the background. And as we move into the land of thought experiment, we allow our minds to soften just a little bit, exhaling and softening with each breath. Now consider, what would it be like if you didn't believe we're separate? Allow your mind to envision what that would be like for a moment. If you didn't believe we are separate. So let's first consider our beliefs about change. What if you believe we're woven together, non-locally entangled? How might that shift your perspective on how change happens? What might be possible? Take your time reflecting with the question and jotting down what arises. If you believe we're interconnected, non-locally entangled, how might that shift your perspective on how change happens? Reflecting back on our word clouds, reflecting at the chart on the right, leaning into possibility, jotting down what arises. How might your perspective about how change happens shift with your belief that we are connected? Just giving yourself a little time to see what arises. What's possible? And then staying with this experiment, holding the belief that we are connected, not separate. For our second question, let's consider our beliefs about our agency. If you believe we're woven together, non-locally entangled, that actions have non-local effects, how might that shift your perspective on your agency, your ability to affect change? What might you consider possible? Take some time with the question, if we're non-locally entangled, how might that shift your perspective on your ability to affect change? What might be possible? leaning into possibility, breathing with the question, jotting down what arises. We're entangled. How might that shift your perspective on your agency? What might be possible? And in the last phase of this thought experiment, holding the belief that we are interconnected, not separate, apply these insights to your change initiative or project. What might you consider doing differently? Minimally, you have a title for your change initiative, the intention of the initiative, the area of the initiative. What might you consider doing differently with your approach to or within the change initiative that you're developing when you apply these insights? Take your time reflecting with the question, breathing with the question, jotting down what arises. And when you're ready, feel free to turn on your video and rejoin the space. Give the folks that are still writing, reflecting a little bit more time. can give one more minute. Still see a couple who haven't come back. While a few folks are still reflecting and writing, I'd like to open a discussion and hear what happened for you. Shifting perspectives, opening possibilities, insights regarding your project. Would anyone like to share something?
Hey, it's Mary. So I kind of feel like I'm on the quantum side of the table anyways, but I looked at this as the interconnectedness instead of an I, a we perspective, a me to a we perspective, more of a team approach. So, and it creates an inclusivity. We are successful together or we're not successful together. The other thing was, we can regarding if item number 2, we can make it successful as an individual or we can sabotage if we're not in that team. So we kind of like we actually have some power in that and being in team, because you need to be part of that change in a positive way, or it can go south really quickly. I kind of looked at that as like the 3 musketeers, one for all and all for one. And then for the last item, applying, bring in those who are going to be impacted, so by change, and make sure they're part of the discussion so they can be heard, ensure that we're all listening to each other and how that goes, and then and work towards a positive experience as a team. So it is exactly that, a successful, positive, impacted experience. That's it.
Thank you, Mary. Did everyone hear that? My internet was cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah, I heard it. Mary, I thought that was really interesting. And one of the things kind of similarly, I was thinking of not only that locally, but the project I'm doing, trying to create something other people outside the SUNY system will see and be interested in. So that's kind of the long range. And maybe leaning it a little bit more to how it can be more globally useful. By globally, I mean wider.
Thanks, Lee. Anyone else?
I kind of like to share something an insight that I had. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the quantum entanglement happens after a point of contact. Before there's contact, there's no entanglement. So I was thinking that it's really important in any type of project to get people who are culturally isolated or insulated from other people to be able to see the different points of contact that actually entangles them with the needs of people that may seem to be distinctly separate. Because they might say, well, I hear all the time, like, New York City ain't got nothing to do with us. It's like, yes, it does. And let me tell you why. If you can't make that connection, it's an issue. So I was thinking about that.
Jose, that's really interesting. I'm also thinking about with those connections that are, you know, non-local, they are impacted, but it affects change as it goes forward, right? So as change happens, it impacts the next people down the line and the next people down the line. Sort of like Lee was saying, is a more global approach. So it almost like it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, I love the image of dominoes because if you line them up, one thing I learned is that with a domino the size of like a 1-inch domino can cause a 100-story tall domino to fall if you just line them up in enough ways, like one getting a little bit bigger after the other. So I love that you use that image.
I thought that was really interesting, both Jose and Lisa, and I don't want to keep bringing this back to physics class, but you actually hit on another feature of quantum entanglement, is that the interaction almost sort of happens, so everything actually is connected, even if you don't realize it from far away. So it's technically one of your electrons could be on Mars right now. So and how would that affect you, right? So I think it's exactly what Jose said. So I sorry, just from the physics perspective, it's cool.
Kind of adding to Lee, Jose, and Mary, probably two very big macro level examples are global warming. If it's true or not, it's debatable for some people, but global warming, COVID-19 very recently. I mean, we're not living in an island, isolated island that affects only us or the trees or animals we have on that island, like Crusoe story. So one thing affects N1, and it's kind of really very true. We are on the same boat. That's true. And supporting Mary's all for one, one for all argument, we are in the same boat. When there's a leak, it will affect eventually all of us. When we do together, fix together, and in a cooperative, synergetic way, will safely reach the land all together. So that kind of connection. And if I apply it to my context in my project, for instance, I would say it's like different cycles to me. First begins in my world, my small world, and then the department. If, for instance, we have new programs in our department, it will affect first my department, criminal justice, then the School of Arts and Sciences, and then the provost office, then the SUNY Plattsburgh School, and it will benefit and help develop the whole SUNY system, the New York State, and the United States. And the interconnectedness to me here is like two ways, from inner to outer, outer to inner, and then it turns into a cycle, virtuous cycle. I know it's too philosophical in this way. I would kind of complicate it probably, but it's like, just an example, if we attract more students, we'll benefit more. We'll have more students, and it will affect the whole cycles in that way. And then more students will come accordingly. And the New York State Police, for instance, will get more students options, more candidates, better candidates. The New York State employment will provide more people, will get more people, and the United States in whole will be affected. So this virtuous, interactive, virtuous, cyclistic, two-way or cyclistic model. And this interconnectedness and its impact and connection reminded me that kind of, and I believe in my context, that's what's going to happen. And that's all.
Thanks, Akir. Sorry for the internet troubles here. Got time for one more sharing if anyone else would like to share something. Some wonderful insights. Okay. So beliefs are central to both what is possible and what is actually realized in our lives and world. What we believe to be true informs what we think is possible. So when we're leaning into this idea of the power to shift and transcend paradigms, it's important that we hold our beliefs lightly and recognize that they are beliefs opening up the possible. So we are at our favorite time. Take a little break and stretch in whatever way that means for you. I am rolling my neck and stretching my arms and lifting my feet off the floor and rolling my ankles and moving my butt in the chair and definitely moving my eyes away from the screen, taking a little screen break. Let's just stretch for a minute. Whatever that looks like for you. Taking a few breaths. All right. We're going to move into our next section, which is on values. What we value depends on what we believe. So we just spent some time reflecting on our beliefs. And we're going to start this out with a couple of word clouds again to dive into values. The first one being what values you consider to be predominant, modern, Western societal values, whatever language you want to use there. When you look out to American society, the values that you see in action. And everybody knows the drill now with how we're doing the word clouds. I'm going to grab the link for you. Put it into the chat. It should open into a window where you can put your responses into the interface. I'm going to go activate that now. It's working and your responses are coming on in. Predominant, modern, Western. See if it will stay stable with a large screen or not. And we see certain words coming forward predominantly. If you want to emphasize something, put that word in the submission again. So right now we're seeing self-sufficiency, consumption, competition, independence, wealth. Hyper-individualism, consumption, independence, competition, self-sufficiency, wealth. So what do we notice here if we were to take a quantum and Newtonian lens to analyzing what we see? Anybody?
Definitely leans Newtonian.
We see a lot of the individualistic, the separate reflections in these words.
Correct. Yes.
Yep. So through our own little experiment, we see the predominance of Newtonian in the values of our world today.
Lisa, how are those words generated onto that screen again? Because I put two things that I looked really hard and couldn't find up there.
That's
It's funny
interesting.
that they were capitalism and white supremacy.
Oh.
Like why can't I find that?
But were other words that you had put in there?
Well, I put patriarchy, unless somebody else
Mhm.
put that in there.
Carolyn, do you know if there's limitations to the number that can be put in or something? I don't have an answer, Jose.
I did see white supremacy in the first generation, and then I think once it sort of regenerated itself again, I did see white supremacy drop off. So there might be some kind of limit as people are re-emphasizing words.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true because, for instance, I said rational choice. It took rational different than choice.
Mhm.
Well,
Just
we also have several, at least in the first generation, individualism or some variation of individualism is appearing a lot in like the smaller font. And so I think we just have a limit and too many people put slight variations on the same theme.
Yeah. And I think that I think it was Lee that might have just been talking a moment ago that it creates iterations and keeps building upon itself. And so it keeps morphing over time.
Definitely think white supremacy should be up there in capitalism. Definitely think as traditional, modern Western European, Western norms. That's like should never be forgotten.
Agreed. Just our language choices were a little different. Okay. So now then, let's take a look at what we might consider to be quantum values. Now, there's technically no such thing if we were to try to find a definition. So what I'm referring to here is values derived from quantum concepts reflective of a quantum mindset. So let's play with that and generate what that might look like. And I'll do the drop the link again. Just a moment. Struggling with all the interfaces that are open. Okay. Everybody should have gotten the link. Activating it now. That should be working. What values do you consider to be quantum values? It's working, it's generating. Off you go. We see cooperation, equality, flexibility, democracy, reciprocity. It looks like everybody might have their responses in. So we see equality, flexibility, cooperation, democracy, reciprocity, good, upfront. Any thoughts on what we see here? All reflective of a quantum mindset then. It's fun to generate those and see what's in people's minds. Go back to the So now then we're going to do a reflection and bring what we just generated and our reflections on what we just generated into connecting with ourselves and into the personal and the practical domain. So what I did was I tried to pull some of what we would be generating in terms of the dominant or more Newtonian values and what we might be generating in relation to quantum or emergent values. Of course, you know what we just saw and what you were thinking. So holding all of that in mind then, if you'd like to turn off your video again, that's up to you. And I'll guide another little reflective process. We're going to reflect on 3 questions and I'll share them visually as we go. Simply notice what's arising inside of you and jot it down. So again, we're going to start with a few long, slow, deep breaths. And just settle into your body. Continue taking several more long, slow, deep breaths, allowing any distracting thoughts to just fall into the background. So reflecting on values, most often the focus of values is on core values. So generating core values, you might come up with a list that includes things like integrity, achievement, discipline, friendship, beauty. And I'm sure many of you have done such a leadership exercise before. Today, we will not be focusing on core values in that way. Instead, we're going to work with this first question. What values do you stand for and why? So to stand for, in support of, to uphold, or to advocate for. What values do you stand for? So take your time reflecting with the question, reflecting with the chart on the right to support your reflections. That does not mean that you need to select from the chart. Just sense into your body, getting at the values that you personally stand for. Listening inside, breathing with the question, and jotting down what arises. What values do you stand for? And if there's something more to that, the why, jot that down as well. What values do you stand for? Now let's consider your vision for change. Like earlier, we discussed that you might have a title. Perhaps you're aware of more of what's behind that title, the intention. It's reflecting on the idea behind your title. Consider the next question. Reflecting on the values that you stand for, which of those values, if any, are reflected or embodied in the change initiative or project that you're developing? And as you sense into that, if the values that you stand for are not reflected therein, then what values are reflected or embodied in your change initiative that you're developing? So take your time reflecting with the question, listening inside, and jotting down what arises. Reflecting on the values that you stand for and what's embodied in your project. And our final reflective question, let's consider the quantum. Reflecting on what you just wrote, are any of the values embodied in your project, in your initiative, quantum-related values? Reflecting with the question, and if not, what quantum-related values, if any, might you consider incorporating into your vision for change? Take your time reflecting with the question, listening inside, breathing with the question. What do you see there with quantum-related values? And if you're ready, feel free to turn on your video and come on back, but take the time that you need. Give folks another minute who are still reflecting and writing. Okay, so while Lee is still reflecting, I'd like to open this to discussion. Whoever would like to share anything about what emerged for them in terms of the values that they stand for and what they saw embodied in the change initiative that you're envisioning. Who would like to share?
I was at first caught off guard by the stand for part of the first question. But it was actually a really helpful way for me to think about it. And I think a lot of the values that I strive for are emerging values, but a lot of the things that I actually stand for are probably dominant values. And that was hard to digest a little bit, but I'm also really happy that I understand that now.
Thank you for your honesty. That's really helpful. Thank you. Anyone else like to share?
It's Mary. Related to the values that I stand for, I think there's an equal mix, and it all depends on a circumstance, right? So I think someone needs to be self-sufficient, but they also need to be interdependent sometimes. You know, there's aspects to everything that I feel like there's a crossover effect. So I wasn't sure that I was sure. I was sure that in what I stood for my values, but I also said they're circumstantial at times. Regarding my project itself, we're talking about an infrastructure change. And with that, and the values I'd want to bring into that, I think we want independence but codependence at the same time. It's a unique situation because we're decentralizing, but we have a centralized office. And I think it's important that there's an amount of independence, but to be consistent across the different teams, you want to have some interdependence. So I felt like there wasn't just a pat answer I could go for some of these values. And as far as bringing in quantum related values to the project change, yes, I think the only way it can be successful is if you bring a team in together and they work together to look at the best options and practices based on the work they do. I certainly couldn't do that for them, and it's not a top-down type of action. It's really the people who are doing the work who really need to identify how to best manage that work.
Thank you, Mary. I want to reiterate, just to be clear again, that we're not judging these columns of the way that we have these values listed here. There's not a good, bad, or right or a wrong. We're bringing awareness to the values that we hold, and then how those are enacted then in the change work that we do. Anyone else like to share? Okay, if everyone's feeling like there isn't an urge there, then I want to connect this to agency. So values are at the heart of agency. The quality of our agency is related to the values that we stand for. So we just reflected on the values that we stand for. And earlier, we looked at our belief in our agency to affect change. We considered that from the perspective of if we're separate or if we're interconnected. So we already touched on this idea of agency, taking conscious action, our capacity to act. And we can see the relationship here to embodied values, how our values become a living expression in action, our agency. Our values guide our actions. we can see how agency is not value neutral. We can see the important role of embodied values in our change leadership. So more from an awareness-based perspective, noticing in what ways we might be maintaining dominant paradigms and noticing in what ways we might be fostering emerging paradigms. We come to the end of our journey today, where we looked at mindset, the power of beliefs, the role of our values and our sense of agency, and we brought in new quantum concepts, entanglement, non-locality, and interconnectedness. And then we brought that to our reflective processes, looking at our beliefs about change, the role of perceived agency in shaping change, the values embodied in our change leadership, considering what is possible in terms of how we approach change. So my offering to you in the between time, this time in terms of noticing our default thinking, see if we can notice our tendencies, our habits of mind, if they're based in beliefs or that we are separate or interconnected. The practicing of moving with both and could be a life practice, so it's still here, as well as experimenting with stretching into what emerged for you in the first session around quantum thinking and quantum leadership attributes that you might want to develop more. And I added in here reflection, reflecting on your change project and applying insights from what we dove into today, the thought experiment and the embodied values. So I'm going to see if I can come back on to you now. Hello. Hello, everybody. So I want to just open it up now because we actually made it through the material before running out of time. And that means that there's space to discuss. So free range for you all in terms of anything that we talked about today or any other new insights that are coming in connection related to things we may have talked about before.
Lisa, we have a small group and enough time if you wanted to go around intentionally to everyone.
You mean pick on everybody? Carolyn has decided we should pick on everybody. I like her idea.
I can be voluntold. Can you just repeat the reflection question?
I moved it into an open reflection. It seemed like the last section of reflection brought some crickets. So I'm opening it up to sharing anything that's with you right now from anything we discussed today, or perhaps something that is brought new insights in relation to the last time we were together. Whatever.
I'll just say the last section, what everyone said gave me a lot to think about. So it wasn't crickets. I heard a lot of interesting things that I'd like to digest.
I think for me, it was wondering if I need to whittle my project down a little. So as I'm thinking about, okay, I'm learning about quantum leadership, I'm going to be relying on leaders in other areas in my project who won't be having this experience. And how do I, how do I engage with that? So again, so sort of making me think about the scope of my project more.
I had a similar thought, Marley. Yeah, because we're focused so much on our own values, but the values of others we're, sort of subject to as well.
So Carolyn, I think that's exactly what I'm struggling with in my head. So it's this, we're talking about this idea that our beliefs and our values impact our agency, and then this idea that we're all interconnected. But the values and beliefs of others impact their agency. And so I'm trying to reconcile that in our mind, because the idea that we're interconnected should make then things like change easier. But if we're not being guided by the same beliefs and values, then that's not necessarily true. So I think I'm just struggling with sort of that dichotomy in my mind of then how this all works together.
Yep.
So there's this cognitive dissonance happening in my head today. And so I'm struggling through this one.
Thanks, Angela. That was great.
I-
I'm
I-
sitting
I'd
in
like
the same boat.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right,
Lisa.
nope, that was it. Go ahead. Close it.
Just piggybacking on that, and like the experience of the visual representations of ideas, and me, like I kind of got caught up on that and was not as much valuing the value of our shared values and a process of being able to identify, because the truth is, across the spectrum of cultures, there are underlying values that we can find ways to reconnect with that can then plant us back on like equal playing field and remind people that we are trying to move towards the same goal, even if we have different pathways. Because with quantum entanglement, you can go your way and I can go my way, and we can still affect change together. That's something that I kind of like. So yeah.
We have two Emilys. We haven't heard from either.
Thanks, Carolyn. Just about to do that.
I was just about to post in the chat the quote, Jose, that you said of you can go your way and I can go my way and we can still make change together. I think like case closed, like there's no more to say. Thank you.
I guess I'm sort of digesting a lot of what we've talked about today, because sort of to Marley's point, we're all having this experience where we are really reflecting on, are we imposing a lot of, false dichotomies that things have to be either or, we're revisiting a lot of maybe ideas that we've held even since, childhood, because we're taught a lot of times in this very, this is good, this is bad sort of framework, because for, especially children, that's what they can kind of wrap their minds around. But the problem is we carry these ideas into adulthood. And I'm thinking about, if we're having this experience and we're revisiting a lot of our own, preconceptions, the people that we work with, though, and work for, aren't necessarily having that. And so with change initiatives, we actually in our office had one within the last couple of years where we were actually told, we want you to change this particular process, but we had freedom to do it the way that we thought best. But we were given just sort of a general sort of mandate to, do it in a way that serves not only us, but our stakeholders. And, we did our best. And it was very much an experience where we accepted that, this is our sort of first pass at this. We know that we're going to have to undergo a few iterations of change, but the reaction from our stakeholders was mixed at best. And so as we're moving forward in that particular process, we're going through phase 2 of sort of revisiting what we did and trying to figure out how can we now incorporate more feedback from the stakeholders. The problem is that the stakeholder feedback is so wide ranging, but everyone feels that they speak for everyone. And so it's a little tough because I'm trying to figure out, even in that initiative, what's the balance that you strike between spending time talking about approach with other people who aren't going through this experience, versus actually doing the work, because that's also just a practical consideration of, how much time are you spending selling someone an idea versus actually making that idea happen. So that's where I'm a little stuck.
Thanks, Emily. Zakir, did you want to share something?
Kind of in the line with Emily. I feel like even the leader, the person who wants to change has those values, quantum values, it's really limited or very challenging to apply if the environment is not. And if the actors around you, your colleagues are not on the same page with you. So that means for some time, let's say in 6 months, what will change? That's a question at the end of a project, right? In 6 months, what? 6 months or 4 months, 5 months is not enough to change the mindset of the people that you're working with, to make them ready to the change so that you can do something altogether in an individualistic, rational choice and more pragmatic Western valued system. And that's why it's a little bit really challenging. That means you'll spend from your energy, from your time in a servant leadership type of stuff that you're going to do most of the stuff yourself and then present them. Here it is. What do you say? Approve or not? That kind of stuff. I know it's too abstract that I talk probably now, but and other stuff, for instance, lack of resources. Probably one of the things perhaps in this quantum leadership training we should learn is specifically, what will I do in a lack of staff? If I need 7 people, but I have only 4 people, what will I do? How will I make a change? How will I fill the gap? Enough resources. Administration cut the budget. What will I do? What would a quantum leader do different than Newtonian mindset leader that will make this one successful, more successful, or make the change happen? If you don't have anything, lack resources, no staff, no nothing, what will he do? What would a quantum leader do? Probably some specific of those cases might be helpful for us too.
Thanks, Akir. It has me thinking about the importance of the holding of the questions themselves. Am I back?
It was a little bit wavy, your last sentence. Sorry about
Wavy.
that, Lisa. What was the right word in English? I said wavy, but it's not wavy. What is that?
Unstable?
A little bit shaky.
I was just commenting on how your comment made me think about the importance of, even just the importance of holding the question itself, of keeping like the questions as friends that are with us in our leadership.
I mean, one idea, sort of to your point, Zakir, I know I traditionally kind of get a little stuck in the mindset of like, I can't do all of what I want to do, and so I just don't do anything. And one mindset that I've had to really shift, I would say over the last 2-3 years, even in my personal life, with some of my personal goals, is I can't do 100% of what I want to do, but is there something that I can do 25%? Basically, is there a small change I can make, because I'm still then making progress as opposed to just not doing anything. So like I used to go to the gym, like, 5 days a week. And right now my schedule, as much as I might try to intentionally make time to go, I might have to say, I have to accept 2 times a week, because that progress is still progress, even though it's not the progress that I want to see. And so likewise, I've been trying to sort of move that into, my professional life as well, where resources, especially working within, the university system or, whatever, resources are always a consideration. But the question is, well, what can I do to make a small change? Because that's still progress even.
I appreciate the question and forcing us to think about very practical things like a budget and resources, Zakir. I just know in my personal situations at SUNY, when resources go away, it's forced me to think more innovatively and creatively and actually have had better results overall. Like one scenario was last year, I had the manager, staff person leave. I took time to rethink the position. And so it left me without a staff person for that whole year. And the one program that she was running, I ended up coming up with the topics, but distributing like among a much wider audience of experts. And so we were able to figure it out. It was definitely a different approach. I didn't have one dedicated resource, but like it was just one example of a resource went away, but it forced me to think about it in a different, more creative way. So I don't know, just want to give you a little hope that it's not, destined to fail if you don't have a resource.
Inspiring. And it's like the chaos is motivating you, which is,
yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to also point out that Jose dropped a link in the chat. Jose, did you want to mention anything about what the video is?
So it's the quickest Adrienne Maree Brown link I was able to find. I was inspired by what Emily was talking about. And I think that she talks about emergent strategies that in a way that is very, very consistent with the quantum perspective. And like Angela, you had me thinking about, it's true, we're gonna have to learn a language to articulate these ideas to people who don't know what non-locality is. Like, actually, that person is still me, right? Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I think about the parallel to nonviolence. And in that sense, there's a very big difference between nonviolence with a hyphen and nonviolence without a hyphen. Whereas one is the absence of something, whereas when it's only one word, it's the creation of something. So nonviolence as one word is the construction of a positive, constructive environment where everyone can thrive, not just the absence of people getting abused, So I'm not exactly sure in terms of non-locality yet how that like resonates, but I know some people speak a language that is familiar when we talk about these things. And Adrienne Maree Brown is like one of the best.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that. Anyone else have a thought before we close today? Mary, did you get a chance to say anything right in this part?
I haven't, but I'm okay. Everyone made some really excellent points. I think that I like the idea of like the small change in percent. Look at what you can do for the small changes. The impacts of other leaders and how they will impact your project or maybe roadblock your project. So you have to really be considerate of that and how you get that buy-in. It was a very good conversation and input, and I appreciate everyone's perspective that they shared. Thank you.
Yeah, Angela, I'm still thinking about what you said and like our constraints basically here. And I just finished that coaching strategies in higher ed course, and it's all about asking people questions and getting them to think, right? So like we might be stuck in this hierarchy and this bureaucracy, like all of the rules. But I think a coaching mindset might help, like just get others to think a little bit deeper, question their own paradigms.
Well said. So Carolyn, is there anything you'd like to add to close today?
Just that I'll summarize important information from today, the video link once it's uploaded to our private YouTube channel, the slides that Lisa would like to share, and I'll call out those reflection questions. So you've got 2 weeks to really, take some time to digest what was presented today and consider it in light of your change initiatives and all that you're doing. And connect with us on LinkedIn. And we will see you again in 2 weeks on Friday, February 23rd. The third session that Lisa's offering is Unlocking Quantum Change. So we look forward to welcoming you back, and hopefully we'll have a full house then. But thank you for your active participation, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon then. Happy experimenting.
Take care.
That was awesome.